most movements, most radical renegade things started with one person who was able to move the masses. And I think that everybody has that ability inside of them to be that one person. They just have to believe that they are that person.
I'm Amy Jo Martin. Welcome to the Why Not Now show. You know that thing you've been thinking about doing? Yeah, that one. Why not now? Have you ever actually taken the time to ask yourself, what's stopping me? Let's talk it through. This is your chance to give that idea the attention it deserves and take action. Each episode, I have a chat with a fascinating person, from entrepreneurs to athletes, celebrities, my parents, rocket scientists, and all walks of life. We talk through a critical time when they've asked themselves, why not now? We dissect that day or even that moment, step by step. We have Renegade Syrita Steib on the podcast today. She's a Renegade grad. She's running for state senate in Louisiana. She's the first African-American to ever, hopefully, get the seat and be elected. We need to help her. Her story's unmatched. I am going to refrain from going into all of the points about her story because you just have to hear it from her. It's like nothing you've ever heard. It's basically a movie. And please listen and do what you can. If anything, awareness is the number one thing that Syrita needs right now. She has the Renegade community behind her in full force, and she's tracking well, and we'd love to see her, get that seat and make a change. When you hear her story, you will understand she's a fighter, and she's a bridge builder, and she gets shit done. And as we know, as women, our rights are under attack in this country. Who do we want on that front line? She is someone who has a proven track record of getting things done, but she's also proven that her work is contagious. A lot of what she's done with policy change and her work on the Hill at the federal level has trickled into other states into take on momentum and be a wave of innovation. So please just listen, and I would be so honored if you would share her story, her social, or this podcast with anyone you feel needs to hear it. And of course, if you can donate, amazing. All the links are below. And thank you. Here's Syrita. Renegade Syrita Steib, welcome to the Why Not Now show. I am so excited for this conversation. In the spirit of Why Not Now, let's hop in. Time is everything, especially for you right now. Can you tell me about a time when you had to ask yourself the ultimate question, why not now?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I've asked myself that question many times over the last few years. But I think specifically as we're talking today about the campaign running for U.S. Senate, I think that was the question that I asked myself before I even decided to run. I feel like I tried everything in the world to talk myself out of running. I ran a poll, and I'm like, surely the poll will tell me that I shouldn't run statewide in Louisiana because Louisiana has never elected a Black woman statewide in the history of the state. I thought that if I traveled to the furthest, most rural parts of the state, that people there would, discourage me and be like, I will never vote for you. And that wasn't my experience. So I think the why not now question came up for me, specifically in those moments of me trying to talk myself out of doing something that I felt called to do. So that is how I threw my head into the ring and decided to run for a U.S. Senate here in Louisiana.
Amazing. And I can't wait to dive in more because this is serious and we need to act now. I know the Renegades are behind you. We just had you speak to the Renegades in San Diego at this Renegade Summit, and we have some things in motion, but it really, awareness is huge, and obviously fundraising. So your story is everything. And what you just said about your why not now idea of how many times you tried to talk yourself out of it. For those listening, as your own why not now idea is rolling around in the back of your mind, I can think of a couple that I've been trying to talk myself out of for years. And that just struck a chord. I've never really thought of it that way, but you might be onto something if you can't find a way to talk yourself out of it and you keep trying. So note to self, that's takeaway number one. Okay, let's dive in. How did this all start? I mean, you have been a game changer and you've leveraged diversity, which is Renegade Rule number 3, over and over and over. It has become an asset for you. Tell us a little bit about your story.
I guess hearing you put it in that way and specifically tying it in with rule number 3, I think the thing that first came to mind is like my life and my existence is adversity. Who I am and how I show up is adverse to every single thing that should have happened to me or how I should have, I guess, given up, over the years. I grew up in a small rural town in St. James Parish in Louisiana. It's called Vacherie. It's about 45 minutes outside of New Orleans. We have a lot of sugarcane, so I grew up as a country girl, fishing, riding four-wheelers. But by the age of 19, I had graduated from high school. I was in college. I had a full scholarship in physics and engineering. I was in the Navy, and I still found myself in trouble. I was arrested at the age of 19, and I was sentenced to 10 years in federal prison, 20 years in state prison, $1.9 million in restitution, all for the same crime. And essentially, the crime entailed taking some cars from a car dealership, and we ended up, now brace yourself, blowing the car dealership up. So that was the crime. So that is what happened. People often say, oh my God, I thought it would have been worse. I thought it was something different. And I'm like, no, this is a sentence that I received from that particular incident. So after serving my time, what I realized was it didn't necessarily matter what socioeconomic background you came from, that most women who go to prison are led there by trauma. I was physically abused as a child. I was sexually assaulted by the time I was 16. So at the age of 19, even though academically and educationally, and I was in the military and I had all of these things going, I often like to tell people, the left side of your brain doesn't have a conversation with the right side of your brain to say, hey, we're going to show up in this particular manner today. And by the time I was 19, I was leading, my trauma was in full display. So that is what caused me to make the decisions that I made. I accepted responsibility and, I did my time. The thing that I didn't expect is that it will continue to be a barrier throughout the rest of my life because of a decision that I made at 19. And when I was released at 29, what I found is that I couldn't go to school. I couldn't access housing, was having difficulty finding employment. It was just like one thing after another, just trying to move past, the mistake that I had made at the age of 19. And what began to occur for me was that I knew that I had to change these things, not just for myself, but for all the amazing, great, awesome women that I met, while I was incarcerated. So I think that is how the beginning, started of all of the work that I know we'll get into some of the things that we've done. But I think it was just in that moment after being released and not having access to bare necessities, things that I needed in order to sustain my life. I knew that I had to do something different.
Okay, so to level set, if I just did the movie trailer of what you just said, you are in prison for 10 years. You realize when you get out, okay, you have these aspirations, you have these goals personally and for the rest of, anyone that has been through a situation like yourself. That's from 19 to 29. Wow, right? You think about those years just as an individual. And so then you go on and you start checking boxes, right? And I don't mean but I mean, we're going to talk about what I mean by boxes because there's a few different meanings, the box. But you're getting after it. You're like, I'm going to school. Weren't you even pre-med first and then you went the attorney route and got your JD?
No, I have I'm a clinical laboratory scientist. So I'm a scientist, but my mom is an attorney. My sister's in law school. They tried to talk me into going to law school, but my dream was to go to med school.
Okay, so that was your dream. Now, can you pick us up from there? Because this is where the resilience and the fierce commitment to doing what you set out to do comes in that most people would not have done. And so you do go on to make a huge impact and policy change, but tell us those steps of going and trying to get into school.
Yeah, so when I got out in 2009, I had a plan. I'm gonna go to school. I'm gonna graduate from school, undergrad. I wanted to go to medical school, and that was my trajectory. That was my path to redemption, or so I thought. When I got out in 2009 and I applied to the University of New Orleans, I was denied entry into the university, even though I had taken about 32 hours of college classes while I was incarcerated through Tallahassee Community College. They used to come into the prison and they had this business management certification program. I had a 3.875 GPA and I was like, okay, I'm in. I got this. And then I applied, and within not even 24 hours, I had a bounce back on my application through email that said, regret to inform you, we can't admit you into the university. And after that, I was just like, what am I going to do? Like, I didn't have a plan B because everything was based on what I saw for my life. So it took me about 2 years of working in construction and just different places. I had gotten married. I was pregnant with my son. And through conversation, I decided that I wanted to go back to school and that I was going to try again to go to school. And I just used the same application. I reapplied to the University of New Orleans. And the only thing I did was I unchecked the box. I don't even know if I knew what that actually meant in that moment and how far that would propel me throughout the rest of the years. But I just wanted to get an education. And I knew, even though I didn't get any communication, that the box that you check, have you been convicted of a felony, on your admissions application was the reason why I didn't get admitted. Like, nobody told me, but I knew that's what it was. And I just unchecked the box and I resubmitted the application. And within 24 hours, I had been admitted. I got scholarships. I was immediately eligible for Pell funding, just grants, just different things. And it was so disheartening to know that I was right. Like, the box is what on the application is what stopped me from going.
The 24-hour, like the difference in that box. And yeah, continue on. Didn't mean to interrupt. It's just I can only imagine what was going through your mind in the future. You could all of a sudden see the future, probably.
Absolutely. But what it also told me was that no one had actually looked at the application. This was like a routing situation that if you check all of these boxes, your application is routed one way. And then if you check another set of boxes, your application is routed another way. And I'm like, oh my God, like how many people, are unfairly not admitted through how they fill out this application. Like, there's no one that says, let's do this by case basis. Let's look a little bit more into this. So about a year into my studies, I was tutoring chemistry, and my chemistry professor and I had developed like a friendship, because again, I'm in my 30s now, I'm in school, and I'm this mom, my baby's with me in class and he's on campus, and just all of these different things. Because I started school, I was 5 months pregnant when I started school. And I'm like, listen, I want to go to medical school. I just need to have this conversation with him because I felt like I was living under this, secrecy, this cloud of secrecy and fear. And I came out and I told him, and he was awesome and he was amazing. And he's been one of my biggest champions. But it was something that he said in our conversation was basically like, oh my God, Syrita, I would have never known, like, you're not like people who are incarcerated, basically is what he said. And innately, like, that felt wrong. It felt like not right, because I knew that the women that I were incarcerated with were kind of the reason why I was the person that I was today. Like, they had a huge impact on my life through those years that you mentioned, that I was really, really young. And I was just like, no, this is not right. We got to do something to address it. at the time, I still didn't know what that would be because I was dead set on going to med school. So I graduated 4 years later. Well, three and a half years later, I graduated and I started applying to med school. I took the MCAT, did all of those things. But as I began to go into universities and interview, they're like, okay, if you raise your MCAT score up to this, I'll make sure that you get an interview. And I'm like, an interview? I'm like, this score that you're talking about is a score that is entrance into any medical program. So you're telling me if I get this score, which I knew that was attainable, that you would guarantee that I get an interview. And at that moment, I was like, I have to fight this, in a different way. And I decided to start Operation Restoration, which is a nonprofit that focuses on helping women and girls transition into society after incarceration and start doing policy work. So in 2017, we passed ban the box on college applications for purposes of admissions here in Louisiana, making Louisiana the first state to do so. And it was just a direct result of me feeling like it had to change. It needed to change. I often say that the stars were aligning for, this particular thing to happen. The conversation was happening nationally, but also here in Louisiana around justice reinvestment. People were doing town halls about different topics. Me and my son drove to one in Baton Rouge and we testified, and I talked about how we have all this talk about justice reinvestment, but we're not talking about women and women who've been to prison. And I kind of just told them my story about my struggles of getting into school. And I showed up in my scrubs because I drove straight from work there. And I'm like, I'm working in a hospital. I had aspirations to be a doctor, but these are the things that happened. These are the things that stopped me from pursuing that dream. And I told them about how I got into college. And there were some legislators there that were just like, we want to do something about this, and how that even came about is a story in of itself and, extremely funny. But we were able to pass that legislation in 2017, making Louisiana the first state. And we've done it in 6 states since then. I supporting other advocates on the ground to do the work. So that piece right there just started a whole different career for me as it relates to being involved in legislation and policy work.
And so you successfully passed it's the Louisiana Act 276, right? And that's the ban the box. Now it's in 6. It's started to be embraced and getting passed in many other states, thanks to your leadership. And when you started to see, I just have goosebumps here. Like when you started to see these results, talk about redemption, and you look at your path back, Syrita, this sounds like a fluffy question, but I have never asked it to a more credible guest. How did you not give up? How did you not give up when you're 20 and 21 and 22 and when you're 29 when you get out? And then a few years later and you're 5 months pregnant and you're going on to that college course in your 30s. Like, how did you not give up? Literally, what did you do or say to yourself?
Well, I think it's a combination of like who I am as a person, but even more so. So like, when I was 18 and I graduated from high school, my class night award was the Revolutionist. People are like, Syrita's always fighting about something, Growing up, I used to fight physically a lot. Now that I'm older, I feel like I'm still a fighter, but just on different levels. So I think I've always had like some type of fight, in me. I've always been the type of person to like address inequities and inequality for people, even in, when I was young. But I think specifically around how I didn't give up is because I'm a person who listens to statistics. I'm a person that listens to different things. And when I got pregnant and I knew that I was having a son, there's all these statistics out there that say if you went to prison, the likelihood of your child going to prison is higher. If you don't have a degree, the recidivism rate is higher. So for me, it was like a life or death situation. I was fighting for myself and my child, my family, and my children to come. Now I have a daughter, and it was about them. It was also about like just saying that like I refuse to be a statistic. I refuse to be a part of the narrative that you get out of prison and you can't make it, right? Because I tell people all the time, when you're there, you never hear positive stories. That's why it's so important for me to go back in and be involved. There were actually like laws around people who had committed a crime being in contact or speaking to other people who have been convicted of a crime. Like, it was illegal and you could be sent back to prison for that. So when people are released, there is a larger power that is invested in people not hearing success stories, right? So when I was released, all I knew is about the people that got rearrested and came back, or, that thing that they talk about, recidivism of going back into prison. Like, that is the only thing that I did not have anything to point to say like, oh, this person made it and they're successful. And certain women, when they get out, I would have bet my life that they would get out and do amazing things and they're back within 30 days. Like, that is scary, and it puts this fear and this doubt in you that you can't make it and you can't be successful. So I knew that I had to do the narrative work around what it actually looks like for someone to have been incarcerated. Like, I don't want you to look at me and be like, oh, I like that you're shocked that I spent 10 years in prison, and like, and it's such a big part of me, but it's not me. It doesn't define me. And I think that was the driving, motivating factor for me, is that, like, yes, I made a mistake. Yes, I made bad choices. Now we're going to move on, and we're really going to move on. And I also don't want anybody else coming behind me to feel the levels of dehumanization and feel the levels of abject refusal to be acquainted with the new me.
We're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back. Hi, everyone. If you are digging this podcast, please do us a favor and subscribe, rate, and review on iTunes. It just takes a moment and it means a ton to us. As I'm listening to you, you literally said it's life or death. And I'm just kind of reverse engineering and thinking about all these conversations over the years with Why Not Now. And it makes me wonder if there's a correlation, I'm sure there is, but between high stakes and that willingness to fight, right? So these were high stakes in every single situation you just mentioned at each phase and stage, high stakes. And so the gloves are out, like we're going at it. So as people are listening, the reason I'm bringing this up is that if you found you haven't taken action on something, maybe the stakes aren't high enough. Maybe you need to go make them higher. Maybe there needs to be something that you do to put a mechanism in place to make it a more serious serious situation. Anyway, I'm just trying to kind of pull out like how the only way was forward for you, right? And it's paved a path in a big way. Let's talk about your race. Okay, let's talk about, we're recording this on October 5th. I'd like to just timestamp that because we're going to get this out the door as soon as we can. What needs to happen? Where are you now? What can we do to support you?
Yeah, so definitely want to jump into that, but I just want to acknowledge what you said about maybe the stakes aren't high enough. I think that sometimes the stakes for some people seem too high, right? I think that there's this narrative around, I can't do this alone, that people succumb to. And if you really look back over the course of history, most movements, most radical renegade things started with one person who was able to move the masses. And I think that everybody has that ability inside of them to be that one person. They just have to believe that they are that person. So I think that it's a combination of both things. Like, let's go out, let's make these stakes higher, but you're making them higher to other people because you already know how high the stakes are, So I just wanted to say, like, I think you're absolutely right in your assessment of it, but also bringing in that sometimes these mountains seem so insurmountable because you're looking at it in totality. instead of like, okay, this is what I want to do. So what's step one? And I've learned that from you, when you talk about things, you say, yes, I want to do this thing, but how do I make it more digestible? By focusing on step one, step two, step three, step four, not looking at all of the steps, at one time. I think
Martin Luther King Jr. You don't have to see the whole staircase. Just take the first step, right?
I mean, I even look at my calendar. People are like, what are you doing tomorrow? I'm like, I don't know. I don't look at my calendar until tomorrow, because if I do, I'm going to be overwhelmed.
Yeah.
I know,
I do that too. I do. Sometimes I'm like, oh, am I going to peek? Am I going to take a sneak peek or not? I look at it way in advance, but then I try not to. Okay, so I love what you just said. And so in my mind, I have this visual of, like, it's almost like auditing how high are the stakes for you at this moment. And if they're feeling way too high, which can be paralyzing, you need guides, you need people, you need connection, you need community, you need people to help support, you need your renegade crew. But if you haven't taken action, maybe they're too low and you can make them higher. So it's just, let's just take a look. Let's zoom out and look at, okay, where am I? Am I paralyzed, or am I just not motivated? Because what's the incentive? Yeah. Okay, so thank you. That's a really great point, especially in your case. I mean, it would have been easy just to be like, this is impossible. I'm out, right? And then, yeah, the patterns, the race. So what do you need? How can we help you? And just bring it. Just tell us. As you do, we'd also love to hear the lay of the land, right? This is an interesting race. And so can you paint the picture? Because even those who are not in Louisiana, we can still support, right? So bring it. Give me the scoop.
So absolutely. So I'm running for U.S. Senate here in Louisiana. Incumbent's name is John Kennedy. So a lot of people know he's been going viral with all of the crazy antics that he has been employing over the last 6 years that he's in office. Louisiana is the only state that has jungle primaries, is what it's called. So we don't have any party primaries. There's no Democratic primary, Republican primary. Everybody runs against everybody at the same time. So our primary election is November 8th. Where the rest of the country, it's their general election. It's our primary. There are 13 people in the race. Currently, right now, I'm polling in the top 4. I'm the only woman in the race. And Louisiana, like I mentioned earlier, has never elected a Black woman to a statewide office. So that is the lay of the land as far as the political arena goes. As I travel the state and I continue to meet people and we're out canvassing and we're doing all of the things, what I've noticed that has held true throughout this campaign is that my name recognition and awareness of the actual campaign is where I need focus and where I need help and where things have to get better and improve. I did a poll early on, as I mentioned, to decide if I wanted to run. And what it showed was that the incumbent was definitely vulnerable. My informed ballot portion profile brought back a high percentage. So we knew that people in Louisiana would vote for someone with my profile. They wanted someone like me to run for office, but my name didn't necessarily connect to the profile. So all of the work that we've been doing has been to do just that, connect my name to the profile that the voters in Louisiana said that they would vote for. So fundraising, as you mentioned before, has been extremely challenging because there's a lot of issues that go into play. But one, the issues that women face, just fundraising generally, in comparison to men. And we have some exceptionalities, so I don't even use that as a stopping point, but it's just, a fact that's out there, that's in the land. I think that me being formerly incarcerated, I spent a lot of time talking about that as well, instead about all of the work that I've done over the last, 5 years, the 17 pieces of legislation that I have been a part of and worked on and been responsible for on a statewide level and a federal level. People get stuck on the fact that I received a full presidential pardon from Donald Trump on his last day in office. So then people want to talk about that as well. And we never get to the meat of the reason why I need their support in the calling and talking to people. So I've moved into like having those conversations on larger scales, reach as many people as need be. I think that fundraising is something that definitely I could use support with and help with. But I also know that awareness of the campaign also brings that in and makes that a little bit easier. So, the thing that I need specifically from you all is definitely awareness, talking about the campaign, making connections with folks that we know would be interested in what is going on here. Because at the end of the day, even though I would be a US Senator representing the great state of Louisiana, you're making laws for the whole entire country. You're responsible for what happens in the country as a whole. And we just don't have enough renegade representation inside of the US Senate.
All right. So as I'm listening, I have some points here. So number one, here's some good news. The voters have said they want this profile. We need to connect the profile, your makeup, what you're all about with your name. So that is awareness. That's totally doable. That's a good sign. It takes action of awareness. So awareness, how can listeners help? They can help by sharing your story in conversation with other friends on social. Share this podcast link. If you're inspired by Syrita's story and her message and what she wants to do and has already done, share this. This will help. On social, best place to connect with you.
Everything is support Syrita. So support Syrita, Syrita, on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, everywhere. And my website is www.syritastib.com.
And all of these links are below. So make sure you take a look and truly go follow and support, share. And that is how this gets done. Like, that is it. And so support Syrita, again, Syrita, and last name Steib, Steib. Okay, so that's one big way. Talk about it. These things matter. It doesn't matter if you're not in Louisiana. This stuff, look at what she's been able to do with banning the box in Louisiana. Now it's in all these other states. Like, it is contagious. So that's one thing. Number two, for sure, if you can donate, do it. Please. Fundraising's, it's everything. I mean, you're up against 12 other people, right? And you're running for the incumbent.
The incumbent has raised $30 million.
Yeah. So we can do this if we get after it. And there are strength in numbers. We've seen this within Renegade, whether we're investing in raising money or rallying everyone and pulling our money together. Do whatever you possibly can. Share it with me. I want to see, and I will support and reciprocate. I know Renegades definitely are getting after it too. So one of the talking points, I can see how people get hung up in parts of your story. Right now, Syrita, what are the top 3 things that you will do when you get to office? What are the things and changes you'll make?
There's so many things, but if we're talking about 3 things, I know my first day in office, I want to take 100 girls with me from the state of Louisiana to take office with me. I think that for me is one of the most important things, because during my work on the Hill and working on federal legislation, I went to office after office after office, looking for someone that I could relate to. And it just never happened. But what did happen was that the seed was planted, that it was possible that because I had access to this place, I can give other people access to this place. So I think it is very important for little girls to see this as early on as possible, so that their dreams are not set by the things that they see only in their communities.
Huge.
So I think that's the first thing.
Amazing. And when it comes to other policy and continued, statewide change that then will lead to hopefully federal, and you have experience making shit happen. Let's just put it that way. You have a figure it out muscle that most people can't even touch. So what other things from a policy perspective?
So I'm also the only person in the race that has experience creating and passing policy successfully, policy that actually sustains and means things.
Hello, let's talk about that.
On a federal level, we've worked to reinstate Pell to incarcerated students We have worked on FAFSA simplification. I have worked on the First Step Act with Dream Corps Cut 50, and we successfully passed that piece of legislation. And we also removed the question for purposes of admissions off of the Common App. So that's an app that people apply to college and they can apply to multiple colleges at one time. We were able to work with Senator Schatz's office to remove that question off of the Common App. I'm the only person with relationships there currently that can go in on day one and begin to execute making policy and passing policy successfully. So I want to put that out there. But, as women, our rights are under attack right now in this country. That is something that I know that without a shadow of a doubt will be on my day one, is not only the rights of women that are under attack and have been rolled back, but what are those things that we could do to eliminate these things from ever happening again? So for instance, a lot of people talk about passing the Voter Rights Act, the John Lewis Act, and that is absolutely essential. But I always want to take it a step further to say, what is that document that currently exists? What is that language that currently exists that needs to be removed so that every 20 years we don't have to go back and address voting rights access?
I think what you just said as a marketer, they were like, this is like turned into let's get your messaging. It sounds like this is the piece that people really have to understand and hear and click with, because we've already got the signs and signals that, we have to connect that awareness. So these are the things that people talk about at happy hour and over coffee. I listened to this podcast and okay, our rights are under attack as women. Yes, we all know that. It doesn't matter what state you're living in. Some are a little worse than others. Who do you want fighting for you when it comes to speaking up? You just heard what Syrita has been through in her track record. Like, that is your quarterback, right? You're our quarterback. So we have to click that. I think that's a really big connection that needs to be made. Very universal. This is happening. Who do we want on the front line? And so, boom, got it. Messaging point number 2 in my book. You know what I mean? And this is helpful because these are quick things that click and make sense to everyone. So, like with Nisha Anand, who's the CEO of Dream Corps and is also a renegade, who works with Van Jones, who founded and Cut 50, and what you're doing, you are the type of women who are, there's a combination of fighting and bridge building. And it's this amazing calculus of balance. It's a delicate thing. However, it's amazing to see what renegades are doing. If we were to take you back, Syrita, to you're 29 and you're filling out that form. Was it online, I'm assuming? Did you fill out the form? Right. Okay. I'm like, it's 2009-ish, right? Like
that was a little monstrous for me too, because when I went to prison, the internet didn't exist, and when I got out, everything was online. So that was a whole different,
Can't imagine. And mobile phones and all of the technology. I mean, okay, so it's 2009. You're sitting there in front of a computer and deciding that moment if you're going to check the box or not. If you could go back and say something to Syrita in that moment, of course you don't know what you know now, but just how you were feeling, what would you say to her?
I would tell her that you got this. Anytime we get ready to embark upon something that we don't know what's in store for us, we're all, insecure. We're all a little shaky. We don't know what will and won't happen. And like, you spend a lot of time looking for people to reassure you or convince you the decision that you're making is the decision, so I would tell her, right now, like, you got this and like, you're going to crush it, so if I had that knowledge then from a voice that I trusted, because I do trust myself, it would have given me a sense of not sereneness, but a sense of calmness as I got ready to embark upon the storm that I was about to go through.
Right, because that was the first box, right? And you got a chance to revisit the box a few more times and for others. And I just want to thank you for demonstrating how we can rewrite our rules, right? So you have rewritten a few times and will continue to for yourself. And that's what renegades do. We don't just write the rules, but we have to keep rewriting them, right? And I know my next book very likely will be about that, because the first set don't always apply to the second phase. And so thank you for rewriting your story too, and just being the impactful leader that you are.
Thank you. Somebody told me something, and I would like to leave y'all with this, is that I never understood it like this. There were two things that they told me. One was that you shouldn't even try to think outside of the box, right? Because if you're thinking outside of the box, you're acknowledging that the box still exists, and you would think only in the realm that's right outside of the box. But if you begin to think like the box doesn't exist, imagine, the places that you can go and be. So I try to get up every day and think like the box doesn't exist. And I think the possibilities, become endless. And then the other thing that I was told was by the same individual, was that everything is made up. Every book that we've written, every law, every, even down to the good book, somebody wrote it. And if we start with the premise of the rules and the regulations and the things that we place upon ourselves and the confines that we give to ourselves is all made up, then we are much more likely to participate in making up new things, So just want to leave you with that.
I love that. It's not just figure it out, make it up, right? It's like make it up and figure it out after. Yeah, I love that. Well, and that's just creation. That's innovation. It's wow. Thank you. This has been my hands are sweaty. I'm so fired up and like excited, and it's go time. It's go time. Action needs to happen now. If you're listening to this, we don't have time to do this, down the road. So thank you again, and we're going to get after it.
Election day is November 8th, and early voting starts October 25th. If you're not registered to vote here in Louisiana, the last day to register is October 11th. So those are the 3 important dates.
Yes, and we're literally going to flip this episode and get it published ASAP. I'm on it. The team is waiting for the file. So here we go. We're going to get this out as soon as we can. Thank you, Syrita. Appreciate you.
Thank you so much for having me, Amy Jo. I really appreciate it.
Hey everyone, thanks for listening to the show. Hit me up on social media to let me know what you think. I'm at Amy Jo Martin on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And I want to hear your Why Not Now moments so I can share them on the show. Just send me a note to whynotnow@amyjomartin.com. For show notes and other offers, you can visit amyjomartin.com/whynotnow. And while you're there, don't forget to sign up for my email newsletter for exclusive content and announcements. A big thanks to Rock Salt Music for all of the tunes by the talented John Coggins. And of course, a hat tip to Richard Brewer for editing and producing the show. I'll see you next time, and until then, why not now?